In 1960, an organisation called the Glass Age Development Committee published a plan to take the land next to some of London's largest reservoirs and use it to build one of the most ambitious cities ever proposed in Britain. The plan was called Motopia, and it was envisioned by committee architect Geoffrey Jellicoe. His plan called for a grid to be laid out just west of London, but instead of that grid being made of roads, it would be made of buildings clad in glass. On top of the buildings would be a road network, connected by roundabouts. Cars would speed around on these rooftop roads, and there would be another level below the top one where they could park and access the buildings below. Down at ground level, pedestrians could walk around freely, and Jellicoe envisioned beautiful gardens and open spaces between the grid buildings. Which sounds quite nice, really. Motopia sounds like a good idea if you don't think about it for more than about a second, because the whole city would basically be a collection of courtyards surrounded by buildings, and you'd be living underneath a motorway and a car park. Jellicoe promised that the homes immediately underneath the roads would be properly soundproofed, but even if they were, what if you wanted to open a window? And the rush hour traffic on those things is a nightmare to even imagine. There wasn't much thought given to public transport, and if you later wanted to widen a road or add more of them, you couldn't. But Motopia was just one of the wild ideas that came out of the Glass Age Development Committee around that time. Others included building a glass bridge over the River Thames, a glass skyscraper near King's Cross, demolishing Soho and rebuilding it in glass, and finally building a glass city out in the middle of the sea. They put out their designs through advertisements in the Architectural Review magazine, and they were always big, bold, and they always had a major focus on glass. But they weren't really serious proposals. In Geoffrey Jellicoe's book about Motopia, he says in the foreword that the design shouldn't be taken literally and that it couldn't really be built in the form that is being proposed. So why did they bother? Was this just a rogue group of architects obsessed with glass? Well, the missing piece is that the Glass Age Development Committee was funded by Pilkington Glass Company. They just wanted to get people talking, and they wanted to get people thinking about using glass as a building material. That's why all the designs were put out in Architectural Review magazine. The architects they hired could basically do whatever they wanted as long as it was big and bold and it used a lot of glass. These days we might call something like this viral marketing or clickbait, but Pilkington was doing it all the way back in the 60s. So Motopia was never really meant to be built for real, but we did build something a little bit like it in Milton Keynes. That's a city where cars do speed around on grids of roads connected by roundabouts, and pedestrians do walk around completely separately below them. That would have sounded really futuristic at the time, but it's often criticised for being too car-centric and feeling impersonal and kind of desolate. Now by this point, I imagine I've planted implicitly in your head the idea that this reservoir is the one where they were going to build Motopia. But I never actually said that. And this is actually the Walthamstow wetlands. It's about 20 miles away from the proposed site. The reason I didn't film at the actual reservoir is because there's a problem with it. And it's a problem for me filming, and it would have been a big problem for people living in Motopia if they had actually built it there. And the problem is that it's right next to Heathrow Airport. So if the car noise wasn't bad enough for you, the plane noise might be. So there's a lot of reasons why Motopia probably wouldn't have worked out quite how Geoffrey Jellicoe envisioned it. But luckily we don't have to worry about that because Motopia was just 1960s clickbait.